Welcome back, troops. Let's tab 59. It's a bit parky out here. What a cracking day to get out. A little bit slippery underfoot, as you can probably see behind me on the roads there. In fact, I was just getting ready to start the video and I almost went arse over myself. Done a quick impression of Torval and Dean winning Bolero. I was Alice Uber the Platts then. But you know, before we get into the video, just saw some on the news this morning. They're talking about SAD. It's this deficiency you get in bad weather in the winter because you're not getting enough daylight. I can't remember what it stands for. But I think you should embrace the winter. When you get a day like this, if you're not feeling great, feeling a bit down in the dumps, put your coat on, wrap up warm, watch it if it's icy on the floor, and try and get out and have a little walk. That'll sort your nut out. Anyway, mercenaries, soldiers of fortune, guns for hire, foreign fighters. There's all these different names for people that go off and fight in a different army. Now, the definition of a mercenary is a professional soldier hired to serve in a foreign army. That's the definition of a mercenary. So I thought it was a car coming in front. So that's the definition of a mercenary. But that term doesn't seem to get used as much. It maybe does in the media, to sort of like sensationalise it. But I think, I've never done anything like that. But I know there's a lot of guys that do. And it's normally now referred to as contractors. PMCs, private military contractors. Private security contractors. That's the definition that seems to be used more today. Are they mercenaries? I don't know. Now, in 1819 and again in 1870, two acts of Parliament come out to address this. And they're called the Foreign Enlistment Acts. And under those acts, you can get charged, arrested, fined or imprisoned for fighting for a foreign army. But I don't think it's been used much, that act. From what I've done my research, I can't see that it's actually been imposed very often. Now, if you look at that definition and that act, some people would say, well, the Gurkhas, the Royal Gurkha Rifles, Gurkhas from Nepal, that fight for the British Army, they're mercenaries, but they're not. They're not. There's a tri-party agreement between UK, Nepal and India that allows them, they take the oath to the monarch and they join the British Army. So they are not mercenaries. Gurkhas are not mercenaries. Nor are you a mercenary if you fight or join, the French Foreign Legion or the Spanish Foreign Legion. Doesn't cover the British Legion. I'm in that. So if you're a Gurkha, if you're in the French Foreign Legion or the Spanish Foreign Legion, you're not a mercenary. You're not doing anything wrong. You're not going to get nicked for it. Now, with regards to Ukraine, as you know, when it first kicked off, quite a few British lads, some weren't even ex-army or ex-forces, some just went and volunteered and went out there to fight. And in fact, in 2022, when the then Prime Minister, Liz Truss, or she was a Foreign Office Minister, which she was only in for a little while, she actually on TV encouraged people to go out. She said, go. If you want to go and fight against Russia and Ukraine, and you're a British national, go. I think she withdrew that statement pretty quickly. How does it stand today? Well, I went on the government website and had a look. And on there, they're saying, if you're a British national and you go out to fight in the International Legion out in Ukraine? If you go and fight for them, you could, it says, you could face prosecution on your return. It doesn't say you will. And as far as I'm aware, and I could be wrong, I don't think anybody that's come back from Ukraine, British person coming back from Ukraine, has been arrested or charged with anything, as far as I know. On the other hand, if you were to go out to Russia and join up as a foreign fighter for the Russians, I think you will get nicked, because just recently, or in recent months, two guys were out there putting videos up, I think, two British guys that were fighting for the Russians, and I believe that they are facing prosecution. And I think they're not going to do them under the 1819 or the 1870 Foreign Enlistment Act. I think they're going to charge them under the Terrorism Act. That's what I heard. Tell me if I'm wrong in the comments. I don't get everything right, remember. So, don't know what that double standard's on about. Apparently, if your country is not friendly with another country it's fighting, and the country that's fighting is against a country that your country is friendly with, then that's when it's wrong. Excuse me. So that's what it looks like. What motivates young British nationals or British nationals to go out and fight in the International Legion for Ukraine against Russia? What motivates them? Well, it can't be financial, can it? I can't see how it can be financial, because surely, then I don't know what the pay is as a foreign fighter in the International Brigade fighting for Ukraine. I know you have to enlist for 6 months, and that 6-month enlistment period in the International Brigade, you can't leave Ukraine. I suppose if you're wounded or something, but that 6 months you enlist for, you've got to stay in Ukraine. But it can't be paying you much. If there's anybody out there that's done this or doing it or knows someone that's out there fighting, I'd be interested to know a little bit more information firsthand. I've seen a couple of interviews on YouTube of British people that have gone out to Ukraine, but there's not been any mention of too much about how much they get paid or whether they're going to be in trouble when they get back, etc. But what I'm saying is I can't see the motivation, if you're British, to go out and fight for Ukraine. It can't be a financial motivation. So what is it? What's motivating them? Well, I don't know. I'm assuming all this. Let's say it's not financial. What's the next thing it could be? Adventure? Maybe it's a soldier that's, or some service, might not be soldier, might be Royal Navy, might be Air Force. Somebody that served a few years, maybe they haven't seen any had any operational experience, and they've left the British forces and thought, yeah, I want to go out there and get a bit of trigger time or something. I don't know. Could that be a motivation? Adventure, the thrill of going out there. I'm sure they don't find it a thrill once they get there. So it can't be money. It could be the thrill of going out and fighting. It could be, they could be motivated by their concerns. They're worried, they want to do something to help Ukraine. They feel that it's something they have to do to help out. They feel frustrated by the whole thing. I don't know. Me personally, even if I was a young man, I don't think I'd go. It's not for me. It wouldn't be for me. So when you look at mercenaries going back, and mercenaries go right back to 400 BC. The Greeks, I think they were one of the first lot that used mercenaries, Greeks. And then all through history, it's an old profession, soldiering. They say prostitution and soldiering, two oldest trades. But of course, in the 60s, very famously in Africa, and especially in the Congo, mercenaries were used extensively, and they really were soldiers of fortune. Back then, they were on big bucks. And there's lots of information about them. One famous guy, Major Mike Hoare, Mad Mike Hoare. He's quite a famous mercenary back in the day, British mercenary. He's actually Irish, but I think he was born in India or Africa or somewhere. But he served before that, he joined the TA. And on the outbreak of World War II, he served in the Territorial Army with the London Irish Rifles, I believe. He later transferred to the Royal Armoured Corps as a second lieutenant. Fought in India, fought in Kohima, fought through the war. And later on in his life, after the Second World War, he done some crazy stuff. He was a bit of an adventurer and ended up as a mercenary out in the Congo. So that was him. Morning. Hello, you.
Sorry.
That's all right. Got chased by a dog. So Major Mad Mike Hall. Crazy guy. Accused of all sorts. Out in Africa, in the Congo. He lived to the ripe old age. In fact, he only died in 2020. He died at 100 years old. Another one, Niall Ellis. Now, Niall Ellis, South African, served in the South African Army, became a mercenary, got his own helicopter, I think, at one time. He got an old Russian Hind or somewhat hip helicopter, and he done a lot of work out in Africa as well. And in fact, Niall Ellis, I think he was a colonel in the end, but he was a mercenary and with his helicopter, and he actually gave air to ground support during Operation Barras in Sierra Leone, in that famous SAS rescue of the Royal Irish that were captured by the West Side Boys. Operation Barras, 2000 was it? So around August, September of 2000, when some guys from One Para in support, now SFSG, but then they weren't. They were in Dover at the time, One Para. They went in to support the SAS on the operation to rescue those Royal Irish lads. And Niall Ellis, with his helicopter gunship, gave fire support for that. So obviously he'd been employed, I suppose, by the Sierra Leone government. I don't know who paid for him. But with Afghanistan and Iraq, lots of private military companies started to spring up all over the place, and people were flocking into it. A lot of ex-soldiers. I'm talking to a friend in One Para back in the 2000s. He said so many guys at the time had done a tour out in Iraq or Afghanistan, and then they were signing off and joining these military companies. Armaco, is it? Blackwater's an American one, isn't it? But a lot of lads were getting out and going out as private military contractors, earning some good money in the day. Gurkhas, a lot of ex-Gurkhas doing it. In fact, a house that we sold to a Gurkha, an ex-Gurkha who was working as a private military contractor back in 2016. So they're getting used a lot. Back to the Congo and other operations I was talking about, Niall Ellis, they're working for Sandline, I think he worked for, and Executive Outcomes was another one. So there's lots of these private military companies. And of course the maritime one, with Somalian anti-piracy. I had a friend that went and done that, an ex-para. And they took a lot of ex-Royal Marine guys as well, manning these ships going through past Somalia where these pirates were. He heard some stories from that, people on the deck with GPMGs strapped to the railings, taking out these little rigid raiders, if you like, trying to attack, board these ships that were sailing past. So there's a lot of it going on. I'm sure there's people watching this that have had actual experience of being, what do you want to call it, a mercenary, a private military contractor. Because a lot of the guys go on what they call the circuit. I've heard of that, where certainly special forces guys, ex-paras, ex-commandos, Royal Marine commandos, they leave the forces and go on the circuit and they work for these different companies. In Afghanistan, Iraq mainly, that's when I heard of it. So there's a lot of it going on. But it's interesting that those guys don't get anything criminally brought against them when they return from working for these private military companies. But there is laws there. There's these two acts of Parliament, like I say, the 1819 Act and the 1870 Foreign Enlistment Act. and I suppose under the Terrorism Act you could get done. You're still obliged to, act under the rules of war, law of armed conflict, as a contractor. I know some military contractors have been accused and prosecuted for war crimes, if you like. So that goes on. Are you afforded the same if you get captured? Are you afforded the same rights as a prisoner of war for a regular army under the Geneva Convention? Well, that's the thing, isn't it? That latest lad that's been captured out in Russia, British ex-Royal Signals, I believe he was. He's only about 24 years old, so he couldn't have done too long in the British Army in the Royal Signals. But he's gone out to Ukraine, fighting in the International Legion, and has been captured by the Russians, and they've got him at the moment. Forget his name. But anyway, they've got him. He's been on TV. They've sort of paraded him, the Russians have, on TV. And he'll probably stand trial. Now, I'm assuming there'll be a prisoner exchange. It's happened before. They'll do exchanges and swap prisoners quite a lot out there, don't they? So hopefully he'll get home safe. But I'd be interested to know if any of you guys would, if you were young enough, or you are young enough, would you be motivated? What would motivate you to go out and fight for either Russia as a mercenary or for Ukraine? Look at both sides of it, conflict, where your loyalties lie. And there's a lot of people on here that support Russia. I've had lots of comments supporting Russia and Putin. And I've had loads of comments supporting Zelensky and Ukraine. So, there's a question. As I say, me personally, wouldn't entertain it. Not my war. That sounds a cop-out maybe. But I do feel sorry for both sides, but it's not for me. Maybe if I was younger and I come out of the army, I don't know, got a good contract with a military contractor somewhere, maybe in a training role, but frontline fighting, I don't think that would have been for me as a military contractor. Anyway, let me know what you think. So, what a cracking day. Look at this. See, I nearly went again. Torval and Dean moment. It's icy down there. That path's icy. Look at that. Even with my boots on. So try and get out in this weather if you can. Embrace it. Don't get down and depressed because it's winter. It's beautiful. Look at it. Wrap up warm. Get out there when you can. Enjoy yourself. Right. If you're new to my channel, you haven't subscribed, please consider it. I'm not saying do it. I'm saying consider it. Thanks for your support, everybody. All the best to everybody out there. Stay safe. And remember, let's tab.